Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 1386. Narrow Path. Upon hearing Amon's, "You're crazy," Klein raised his head and laughed out loud. "I just gave up according to your arrangements. It's just that it's more complete than you think." As he spoke, an illusory brand appeared on the forehead of the ice-cold and bizarre mask he was wearing. It was a strange door of light that was tainted with bluish blackness. As for Klein, he was also enveloped in something similar. Under the translucent dark-colored cloak, more and more slippery and sinister tentacles appeared. They were densely packed and extended until they occupied the nearby sky. As his dark eyes flashed, Klein looked at Amon and said with a smile, "For me, instead of you becoming the Lord of the Mysteries, wouldn't it be better if we let the past him revive?" After his mental state stabilized and he figured out the key to Amon's surprise attack, Klein's thoughts of giving up removed his resistance towards the Lord of the Mysteries' will in his body, allowing him to further revive. It was precisely because of this that he was able to control Sapphira Castle at critical moments and borrow the power of error to avoid the collapse of the space created by Amon. Without waiting for Amon's response, the corners of Klein's lips curled up as he said with a smile, "After you were corrupted by Sapphira Castle and showed signs of madness, you immediately recovered and could use Sapphira Castle to create the effects of blind stupidity. After releasing the suppression of the Lord of the Mysteries' will in you, you didn't enter a half-crazy state, as there are external powers helping you. You should have an extremely key important avatar. It might even be like Pala's choice to lower his level. It's sleeping at Adam's place, and it allows a visionary like him to personally protect your mental state. As long as the awakening of the Lord of the Mysteries' will doesn't exceed the limits of what Adam can withstand, you won't go crazy here if you don't lose control there. Therefore, your most serious problem is that you have to maintain a normal connection with that body. Once it's interfered with, your condition will be in trouble. And this connection is actually very weak under Sapphira Castle's isolation effect. You deliberately showed a half-crazed state for two reasons. Other than luring me to find an opportunity in this direction and stepping on the trap you set up, you were also hiding this fact so that I won't be able to target this aspect while engaging in a battle with you. Of course, there are plenty of problems outside these ones. After all, you aren't fully prepared. If I had discovered these problems earlier, even if I was a king of angels with the uniqueness, I would have the means to defeat you." Amon listened quietly and raised his hand to adjust the crystal monocle in his right eye. The corners of his lips curled up as he let out a sigh with a smile. Upon seeing this, Klein smiled and shook his head. "You truly are powerful, cunning, and terrifying, truly worthy of the title of God of Deceit. If it wasn't for the fact that I had long considered what I would do when forced into a corner by you and had no other choice, I definitely would have hesitated just now. And if I hesitated slightly, I would have already died. In that case, Amon would completely control Sapphira Castle, preventing Klein from returning from the fog of history for a resurrection." Amon stared at the increasing number of sinister tentacles extending out from under Klein's dark-colored cloak. He slowly took a deep breath and said with a smile, "The Lord of the Mysteries in you is about to truly awaken." Klein's smile had a nerve-wracking feeling to it. "You can also compete with me on this point. Our next battle is very simple. It's a competition of who awakens the Lord of the Mysteries' will to a greater extent, a competition of whose control over Sapphira Castle is deeper. 50%, 70%, 90%, until we reach 100%. Then, with a bang, we explode and he returns. What do you think? Are you going to take the bet? Let's see who can hold on any longer first. It's very thrilling, very interesting, and very suited to your preferences. It's like the roulette that's popular in Face Sack. 2 people, each having a revolver and a bullet inside. They take turns pulling the trigger at their temples. Whoever gives up first results in his opponent winning. And if no one gives up and persists until the end, there won't be a winner. He will be the winner." Amon's brows pricked up as he smiled without saying a word. Klein looked at him and said with a smile, "Although you've always been pursuing thrills and are known to be a risk taker, you achieve your goals most of the time. Not only do you not lose much, you often gain a lot. And in the few failures that you do experience, you only lose some of your avatars and some items. You've never suffered any serious injuries or been placed in a desperate situation. Your every action is a product of meticulous planning. Even if you fail, you will have a way out. Does this mean that you value your life more than I imagine? You do like thrills and seek it for pleasure, but to do so regardless of the price is just an image you portray. How can a real god of deceit wager a bet with himself at stake? Of course, this is just my own guess. Perhaps it's wrong. Anyway, do you want to take the bet?" Amon stroked the crystal monocle and made a TSK like Medici. "You're really crazy," Klein replied with a smile. "In the eyes of others, this is indeed insane. But to me, it's just a choice. Compared to you, I'm more willing to believe in the former Lord of the Mysteries. He is a true great old one, looking down on the universe from high above and treating most of the living beings as insects. This would make him distance himself from reality. Besides, I should still have time to get the genie to be my witness. I'll get the Lord of the Mysteries to promise me certain things. To him, it's very simple and worthless." Having said that, the corners of Klein's mouth curled up as he said, "I won't lose too much, just myself. There are always some things that are more important than others." Amon maintained his smile but didn't say a word. Klein then surveyed the area and found the magic wishing lamp and Trunso's brass book among the floating fragments of the wilderness. He immediately laughed out loud. "Look, I didn't get punished. This means that I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth. In fact, the laws set up by the Trunso's brass book had long been abolished since the Divine Kingdom was destroyed during the star's descent. Later on, the Amons dared to attempt to use steel. But Klein's main goal wasn't to prove anything, but to show his determination, firmness, or perhaps madness. Of course, what he said was the truth. He was indeed willing to put them into practice. Otherwise, there was no way he could hide it from Amon or exert enough pressure on him. Amon smiled and said without a hint of panic, "Sounds interesting. Isn't it? Let's begin." Klein replied without hesitation as his eyes turned darker. Amon's smile froze as his palms suddenly gathered together. Beneath his classical black robe, there were also slippery and sinister tentacles. His aura changed a little as his body seemed to have a dark cloak on it. At that moment, Amon became more like the Lord of the Mysteries. However, he wasn't competing with Klein in the progression of the awakening of the Lord of the Mysteries. Instead, he was using this to deceive Sapphira Castle to create a corresponding bug and creating a chance to escape. If the authority of the era were to take effect at the same level, it would often have different preconditions. First, the medium and target had to be similar enough. Second, there was a certain connection between the two. Third, there were certain logical contradictions between certain matters or objects. Fourth, some of the rules were indeed incomplete. Fifth, while not directly affecting the target, construct an erroneous environment as a divine kingdom. In this aspect, the restrictions of fooling were even fewer, but once an error satisfied the conditions, it would be difficult to defend against or terminate it. Amon now wanted to take the initiative to disguise himself and satisfy the first category. This was similar to the invasion of a virus. First, it had to make the other party believe that they were on the same side to avoid detection, and then paralyze any defenses to achieve their respective goals. When a fruit looked like a strawberry, smelled like a strawberry, tasted like a strawberry, then it would basically be considered as a strawberry. But in reality, there might be an exception. At this moment, Amon's appearance resembled that of the Lord of the Mysteries. His aura was like the Lord of the Mysteries, and his powers were like the Lord of the Mysteries. His mental imprint was also similar to the Lord of the Mysteries. With the authority of an error, it would naturally make Sapphira Castle believe that he was the Lord of the Mysteries. Suddenly, Klein's damaged the full divine kingdom completely collapsed. The grand and ancient palace and the model table inside appeared. The grayish-white fog beneath Sapphira Castle rose and enveloped the space. The grayish-white fog split into two waves. They clashed fiercely in a particular spot, producing vortexes one after another. They tore open a gap that led to reality. The power of Sapphira Castle was at odds with itself in this second. It was as though it didn't know which Lord of the Mysteries to obey. Amon's figure immediately vanished, using Dor's authority to rush out of Sapphira Castle. Just as he touched the edge, his body paused before being sent flying backward. At the fool's seat, the corners of Klein's lips curled up as he sat there. His glabella and the strange door of light around him became more obvious, as though they were corporeal. This released an immense convergence force that reached an unimaginable level. It was like an invisible hand that pulled Amon back. Amon's body suddenly split apart, transforming into countless selves. And in front of every Amon, an illusory astral door appeared. Silently, the astral doors opened at the same time, but in the endless darkness behind the doors, slippery and sinister tentacles appeared, blocking Amon's escape. At the tip of the tentacles, resplendent starlight lit up as they instantly enveloped the Amons. The Amons couldn't help but gather together, turning into a conceptual cluster. These concepts included but weren't limited to pointed hats, classical black robes, monocles, fate, time, keys, doors, bugs, and Trojan horses. Klein slowly stood up and smiled at the conceptualized Amon, who was now in a passive state. You can also awaken the Lord of the Mysteries as will further, but this is different from death. It'll definitely affect the body at Adam's side. A conceptualized Amon rapidly gained a physical form. He relied on the door authority to escape from his current state. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile, but he didn't respond to Klein. He seized this opportunity to use the error authority to deceive, using an avatar outside that he had prepared ahead of time. It could be used to replace him and swap places with him. This was similar to the swapping of marionettes in the seer domain, but at this level, the principles were different. It wouldn't be affected in most situations. However, Amon still failed. He realized that his error authority had been forcefully suppressed. As Klein slowly got up, more slippery and sinister tentacles appeared around him. The smile on his face became more exaggerated. Right on the heels of that, Amon's eyes glazed over and the smile on his face froze as the crystal monocle lost its luster. At the same time, the cold, bizarre mask on Klein's face squirmed. The blind stupidity effect. In the next second, he grafted himself to a certain concept in the cosmos, and he used his authority to influence the corresponding environment. The surrounding slippery tentacles aimed at Amon, like revolvers. In Amon's eyes that were still glazed over, a supernova exploded. An unimaginable sea of scorching light surged out, shattering his monocle and drowning his body.